Rabbi Balkany will not be recording the usual video for this week. In its place, we are presenting an audio shiur that the rabbi gave some years back, and next week we'll be back to our usual video format. Please feel free to post any questions in the comments and enjoy the shiur.
A freilichen, a listigen Erev Shabbos to those listening. Today is Parshas Vayikra. We begin the new Chumash, the third Chumash cycle, and also we are now in the Chodesh that all of the hidden miracles of Adar come out into revelation. Now, this Shabbos, in Parshas Vayikra, the Sedra begins with a small aleph. Vayikra, if you take a look into a Sefer Torah or into a Chumash, you will see that the letter aleph at the end of the first word, Vayikra, is very small. And in the Medrash, there are many, many drushes why this aleph is small. And one of the things that is said is because the aleph, which when you say the word aleph, the letter aleph, you have an aleph and a lamed and a fei. And it's a remez, the Meforshim say, the Medrash says, to the little children who begin learning Torah purely, that there is a purity and a kedusha to little children who are 3 or 4 or 5, innocence without any type of chatoim, and the letter aleph, which is pronounced aleph, there is a pasuk ve'aleph chochma, and I will teach you chochma. So the Meforshim say that we should never in our generations forget that the backbone and the cementing factor of each and every generation is indeed the Tinokos Shel Beis Rabban. And there is a reference to the Medrash that when HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave the Torah, he asked Klal Yisrael, who is going to be the guarantor, the Arevim, that you're going to keep the Torah? And at first the men said, we will be the Arevim. We will be the guarantors. HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, unacceptable. That is not good enough. Then there were other layers of suggestions who could be the guarantors that Klal Yisrael would keep the Torah, and everything was unacceptable until they said that our children, the little, pure, beautiful children, they will be the guarantors. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, acceptable, 100% acceptable. So the whole fact that we have our life and our Torah, our mitzvahs, meaning our life, the Torah, is because of the little children. And that, the Meforshim say, is the remez when we begin Parshas Vayikra, because we know that in many yeshivas they begin learning Chumash with little children in the Sedra, Sefer Vayikra, this Sedra. So it is a remez to give chashivas and to value the tremendous asset that we possess in having children who were the guarantors of our receiving the Torah. Now, in addition, the Balaturim says, Vayikra el Moshe, that really Moshe Rabbeinu wanted the word to be without an aleph, which would have been pronounced Vayakar or Vayikar. Whichever way you pronounce it, it would have meant, and he happened to have met HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Moshe Rabbeinu had a very great distinction, the Medrash says, between even Bilam, who was the greatest in Nevuah by the Goyim, that it was always at night that he met Bilam in a dream, but there was never, or he met a Malach, but HaKadosh Baruch Hu to speak to him only was when he was sleeping. Moshe Rabbeinu was the only Navi that really had tremendous Nevuah while he was awake. He was at that Madrega. And he did not want to publicize it. Moshe Rabbeinu wanted to be equal in the eyes of the world to like Bilam. Yes, I'm a Navi, I'm a prophet, but not that I'm so special. So he preferred to leave out the Aleph, because with the Aleph it means, and he called, means he spoke openly to Moshe Rabbeinu. And that Moshe Rabbeinu did not want to have happen. Says the Baal HaTurim. On this, there were tzaddikim who asked that we know that on every letter in the Torah there are tagim, little crown-like lines. And Rabbi Akiva came and darshan bushel baskets full of halachas from those little tagim. Now, you could imagine if from a little line above a letter there was so much to learn, then if there would have been a big aleph, we would have learned more. So why did Moshe Rabbeinu prevent us from having so much extra in halacha by insisting on a small aleph? A bigger aleph would have provided much more to learn from. So these tzaddikim answered that Moshe Rabbeinu wanted to teach us the lesson of how to look, to minimize, and to search out in every situation, to minimize our own glory and to run from headlines. And if that is the lesson of a small aleph, even though a big aleph would indeed have provided us with many other halachas, that this lesson of humility supersedes every other consideration, and it was well worth that Moshe Rabbeinu did dafka, the small aleph. And that even, and they say that even a lesson that's greater than learning out humility is how Hashem relates to Klal Yisrael. That we know that there's no happenstance. That Vayikra means somebody bumped into somebody suddenly. It wasn't planned. And it is a remez, the fact that he wanted to have Vayikra just like Bilam had, that he and HaKadosh Baruch Hu would not allow it, was because that, fine, you want a small aleph to teach them a lesson in humility, I'm going to go along. But to totally take out the aleph and make it like a story of Bilam that just happenstance, that is not Klal Yisrael. That's Goyim. Things are happenstance. By Yidden, there's Hashgacha Protis, there is divine intervention to every aspect of our lives, and there is nothing that we think or do or say or accomplish or fail at, for that matter, that is not Hashgacha Protis, and there is a master plan and reason why it would happen as such. So therefore, HaKadosh Baruch Hu indeed went along with allowing him to make a small aleph to teach the lesson of humility, but at the same time, he would not allow him to eliminate the aleph because the lesson and limud of Hashgacha Pratis is so clear in the difference of Klal Yisrael to the happenstance of the Ummos HaOlam, of the Goyim of the world. Now, in this first pasuk, it says, Vayikra el Moshe, Vayedaber Hashem Elav Me'ohel Moed Lemor, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu spoke to Moshe Rabbeinu from the Ohel Moed. The Chazal, the Medrash, is replete with, and Rashi talks about it, the fact that the Ohel Moed, the voice of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, was contained in the Ohel Moed, and Moshe Rabbeinu alone heard it. Now, HaKadosh Baruch Hu's voice is Kol Gadol V'lo Yosef. The whole world should have heard it. But nevertheless, it was confined to the walls of the Ohel Moed, and that nobody standing outside could have heard it other than Moshe Rabbeinu. Now, the sermonic drush on this is that there is always a voice calling out, but you have to tune in to be able to hear it. And what they mean to say is that, the simple meaning is that the voice was confined so that Moshe Rabbeinu would be the only one to hear it. But why didn't others hear it? Because they were not tuned in. Had they been at the Madrega or even close to Moshe Rabbeinu, they would have also heard it. Just like it says in Pirkei Avos, B'chol yom baskol yotzes mehar chorev, that every day there is a baskol that goes out of the mountain of Chorev and calls out to the entire world a message. Now, if the Mishnah says the B'chol Yom, that every day it happens, it means it's still happening now. Do you know anybody who has heard that Baskol? The answer is we are not at the level of Baskol to be able to hear it. But the fact that the Mishnah says it's going on every day, it's going on every day without any type of fail. So the concept of a person, and in our lives, we see it all the time, that Shemayim is sending us a message, is sending us a hint, is sending us something which we should pick up on, and we don't, because we sometimes so stubbornly see in a direction that we are unwilling to open up our eyes and to realize and to accept the fact that we are sending different types of messages, what we should do and what we shouldn't do in our daily lives. But sometimes because we're so rigid in our approach to what we like and what we don't like, that we just ignore the siman and we ignore the messages and we go about our daily lives accordingly. So that is the message of this Chazal, that we have to open our ears and open our eyes and tune in so that the heavenly messages sent to us will be acknowledged and will be received accordingly. Now, the Ramban in this week's Sedra speaks a lot about the fact that if somebody did not bring a animal as a korban, this whole week's Sedra is talking about korbanos. It's the introduction. They finished the Mishkan, and now the actual activity of the Mishkan began with all of the korbanos and the different things that they did in the Mishkan for Klal Yisrael and for the Hashros HaShechina of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So Vayikra begins to discuss in detail how we bring a korban and what is a korban, and the opening pasuk of korbanos is Adam ki yakriv mikem korban lashem, that a person and the Meforshim say, why is it called a korban? Because it's korav. It's from an expression of getting close, that when a person brought a korban, he allowed his yachas, his friendship, or his closeness with HaKadosh Baruch Hu to be enhanced. And it was a cementing factor in bringing people closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And that's why the word is korban, which comes from a sacrifice, which comes from the word karav, to get close. But Mefarshim point out that even though this is an instant way of getting close for a Yid to become closer and more attached to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but nevertheless, the key word in the pasuk is ki yakriv mikem, from you. That means when somebody was makriv or korban, he had to put his mind, his heart, his soul. He had to really become part of it and feel part of it to be able to gain that closeness. And that is what the pasuk says, Adam ki yakriv mikem. It has to be from you. And the message to us is that when we learn a blat Gemara or we do a chesed for another person, we have to put our whole heart and soul. We can't just offer lip service or just go through the motions. We have to be able to feel that we're diving in to the sea and the ocean of emotion and feeling and hergish and sensitivity, and we are becoming part and parcel of that which we are doing totally. And that's the message of Adam ki yakriv mikem. Now we know that Sfarim say, the Arizal talks about it, that why if a person, let's say, had to bring a korban chatas, for instance, if a person, let's say, by mistake, leaned against a light switch and the light went on chas v'sholom on Shabbos, so it wasn't like he said, "Oi, what did I do?" and go about his business. He had to did an avera b'shogeg, unintentionally. He had to bring a korban to the Beis HaMikdash called a korban chatas. Now the Arizal says, why would he go? Because he made a mistake on Shabbos and go take an innocent animal and shecht it and be makriv it as a korban. Why would he do that? What did the animal do? Because this guy did something incorrect. And the answer is, says the Arizal, that every time a person chose an animal to be brought as a korban, there was something about the essence of that animal, like the soul, the neshama of that animal, that required that neshama had to bring a korban chatas. And when he went over and looked at a flock of 100 cattle, and he chose one, this one and not the other one, it was because from Shemayim, from heaven, they led him to choose that one, because that one was waiting for its tikkun, for its complete cycle, that it owed a korban chatas, and by this man bringing for himself a korban chatas and choosing specifically this animal, now the animal's neshama was being fixed up by the transaction, and the person's neshama, the little blemish that came onto his white sheet, his record, now was being cleared up also. Now, if somebody didn't bring a korban, an animal, they were allowed to bring min hatorim, from the turtle doves, o min b'nei yoina, from the young doves. And the Ramban goes into an entire discussion about why not, let's say, just a simple chicken. Chickens are much more plentiful and everything. So the Ramban says that the reason that specifically turtle doves, Torim, were chosen was because they are faithful to their mates, which is a very interesting insight. The Ramban says that if a turtle dove is married, and the mate dies, the turtle dove never remarries. And it's out of loyalty to the original mate. Now, I want to say up front that 100%, if someone lo aleinu, lo aleichem 1,000 times over and over loses a mate, chas v'shalom, many people remarry, and it is not a disloyalty. People sitting in a house alone sometimes cannot survive. They can't just sit with the four walls, and there is, in halacha, of course, 1,000% mutter for a person to remarry. And in many cases, it's a very important thing for a person to do. But deep down, many people who go through a tragedy like that and then remarry, there is a certain reluctance, or there is a certain hesitancy, as if they're like being disloyal to their first mate, to their husband or to their wife. But a person can't wither away, and every person has to recognize who he is and what he is. Like the old school Rebbe, Zecher Tzadik Levracha, used to say that, when his Rebbetzin passed away, he lived for another 20 years and never remarried. And he used to talk about the fact that a person is medabek, he attaches himself to the Shechina. And who needs, a physical mate? You have the Shechina. Now, most people are not at that level of tzidkus, of what the Skolya Rebbe, Zecher Tzadik V'Kodesh L'Vrocha, that when he said his Tikkun Chatzos and his chaloimas, the dreams that he used to have and relate to us by Atish, what he discussed with the Baal Shem Tov and what Torah he discussed with this. This was not just an average person, but average people who live in this world and are regular human beings. So I don't want to say this chazal about the Torah and leave anyone with 1% guilt feeling in any which way, that they should know that it's a mitzvah rabbah, and by Tchias HaMeisim, anyway, the Kabbalah Svarim say that if somebody is married and they have children, and the mate dies and they remarry, when it comes to Tchias HaMeisim, they end up going forever, eternity, with their first mate, the one that they had the children with. So the person doesn't have to feel in any which way guilty or disloyal, chasam. But the Ramban talks about the Torim, that they never remarry because they want to remain with the memory forever of their first mate. And it doesn't say yoina, it says b'nei yoina, that the regular doves become very jealous, but the baby doves are exemplary. Not they share and they do. The Ramban goes through why it's the b'nei yoina and it's the Torim, that this is so choshev that if a person doesn't bring an animal korban, that it's preferable that he picks specifically, and the Torah says so, a tor, which is a turtle dove, or b'nei yoina, the baby doves, because the essence of their character is such a high level that that's very befitting to bring, if a person can't afford the actual animal, to bring in its place, and it is totally sufficient in bringing that instead of the other item, instead of the actual animal. So it shows that a consideration when we do bring a korban, or we do an action of chesed or a mitzvah, dvar mitzvah, that we be able to try to bring out the best of our qualities when we do it. A person could give someone tzedakah or bring them a hot meal, not say good morning, not say good night, not thank you for the opportunity, not to just bring it. Well, I brought the food, so what else do I have to do? Get down on my hands and knees? Well, the answer is yes, you should, not in a literal sense, but in a figurative sense, get down on your hands and knees and make sure that there is a smile and that there's personality, and you're making the person not only enjoy a delicious meal, but in addition, you are providing them with a vehicle of encompassing that meal in a happy, cheerful frame of mind, and that you elevated their spirits, not only their physical need of having the food. Now, I want to say to you that there is a tremendous discussion about shaving. Some people hold shaving is osur. Most poskim hold it's mutter to shave. But the neder Rabbi Yehuda, when he came in to speak in a big shul, neder Rabbi Yehuda lived 200 years ago, as a matter of fact, around 230 years ago. When he came in, he noticed that there was no person sitting there except for the Chevra Kadisha and the Dayonim of that town. Not one had a beard. And it was Parshas Vayikra. And by the way, the neder Rabbi Yehuda had no love for Hasidim. He used to learn, as a matter of fact, day and night, and he used to keep under his foot on the ground a copy of the Sefer Toldos, the famous Toldos, who was a Talmud of the Baal Shem Tov. As a matter of fact, the Toldos lived to be 110 years old, and he was older than the Baal Shem Tov, but he was completely his Talmud. And he wrote a Sefer, we have it, the Toldos, and the Toldos Sefer, the neder Rabbi Yehuda used to keep under his foot on the ground till a certain point, and he stopped doing it, but to show his disdain for Hasidim and Hasidic Torahs and whatever. You know, in that Kufa, it was right after the Shabsi Tzvi story that Shabsi Tzvi went crazy. He knew a lot, and he proclaimed himself Mashiach, and many, many people fell in. And he himself went crazy and converted to Islam at the end of his life, which meant he went full circle in becoming a goy and a this and that. And this was who's supposed to be Mashiach. You see, in Amsterdam, there's still a Portuguese shul that 3,000 people are able to be seated in that shul, and that entire shul in Amsterdam, like many other kehillos in the world, accepted the fact that Shabsi Tzvi was Mashiach. So he really fooled a lot of people because he was overwhelming in his charisma, his presentation, his everything. And in that Tekufa, many of the tzaddikim were afraid of another Shabsi Tzvi. So, and just then, the Baal Shem Tov, right after Shabsi Tzvi revealed himself, So there was a lot of hesitation and caution because of this Shabsi Tzvi story. And one of the antagonists was the Neder Yehuda, who was the Gadol Ador in Psak, and today still every Bezdin's using his Shilas and Shuvas, and he was a tremendous tzaddik and a tremendous yid, but he felt he had to protect the generation from falling into any pitfall similar in any which way to Shabsi Tzvi. So anyway, the Neder Yehuda came in and made a drasha, and he walks in and he was shocked. So he decided to ditch his drasha, and he said to them, you know, the first pasuk in Parshas Vayikra, the Haftorah that we are going to learn this Shabbos, Am zu yitzarta li tehila si yisaperu, he teached for them and said that the beauty of a Yid is that he has a beard, because we know al pi Kabbalah that all of the Rachamim, the Yud Gimel Midas HaRachamim, which is higher, the Hashem Keil Racham V'Chanun, is higher than Shemon Esrei. It's from the Olam HaKeser. And Shemon Esrei is the Olam HaTzilus. It's higher. That's the greatest type of Rachamim that HaKadosh Baruch Hu can evoke to Klal Yisrael, and that we can ask for it to be sprinkled upon us, all types of schusim, rachamim, and everything else. And it comes from the Yud Gimel, the 13 places on a man's face where the beard grows is the source of the place of transmission of those Yud Gimel Midas Harachim. Now, if a Yid doesn't have a beard, and it's Mutter La'alach, of course, he receives Yud Gimel Midas Harachim, but the beard enhances it and underscores it much more than without the beard. So say all Sforim, whether they hold La'alach, it's Mutter to shave or not Mutter to shave. But the Neder Yehuda was very taken aback by the fact that no one of an entire town had a beard. So he said to them, the pasuk says that Am zu yatzarta li, that I created my nation of Klal Yisrael, tehilasi, to yisaperu, that they should tell and they should pronounce my praise. That means one of the reasons I created a nation called Klal Yisrael was that they should be able to express all of the beautiful things about me to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So the Neder Yehuda did a play on the words. The words lissaper means to tell, but also a saper is a barber, someone who shaves. Lissaper, to shave. So the Neder Yehuda exited from the traditional translation of the regular words in that pasuk of Tehillah si yisaperu, that my praise they will tell, and he said Tehillah si, the proclamation to the world that you are Yidden, which is a Kiddush Hashem for me, is through your beards, and yisaperu, they shave it off. So that was his cute, interesting play on the words, getting across to Klal Yisrael, to his Kehillah that he was speaking to then, the message of the importance of beards. But I do want to underscore that according to regular mainstream halacha, it is mutter to shave, and this was not a put-down of anyone or condescending of anyone who does shave. But for someone who does have a beard, there are tremendous milas, and those milas I want to bring out, that he certainly makes himself a conduit for Midas Harachamim in a much stronger sense with the beard than without the beard. So I would like to say to everyone that we know that it is now 10 days before Pesach, and we are zoicha to be immersed in the mikveh of Nisim Lamala Min HaTeva, in the world of Chodesh Nisan, which uplifts us and propels us heavenward, that we have the ability to do greater and more dynamic things with our lives as we are in the world of Chodesh Nisan, each and every minute, each and every hour, each and every day is tremendous. And we will talk, Be'ezus Hashem, next Friday about, since it will be the Shabbos, the last time that I speak before Pesach, so I will be discussing the Haggadah and the Inyonei Pesach Be'ezus Hashem next Friday. The following Friday, 2 weeks from today, is Friday Chol HaMoed Pesach, which I will be speaking Be'ezus Hashem, and I will then be discussing the inyan of Shabbos Chol HaMoed and the last days of Pesach and the entire connotation of what Shvi'i Shel Pesach and Achron Shel Pesach represent. A Freilichen, a Listikin, and a wonderful Shabbos, the first Shabbos of Chodesh Nisan for this year, and all of the Nisim v'Niflaos Lamala Min HaTeva should be bestowed and drench Klal Yisrael with a Guten Shabbos.